Well, good morning and welcome to the shop. Got an interesting little project today. I'm going to be installing a new machine outlet, and so I need to do a little modifications to my shop. So let me show you what I got here. Hello there. So with the assistance of my shop dog today, we are going to be installing a new plug for this shaper here. So this shaper is a 1.5 horsepower, and it kind of pushes the limits of a normal circuit. So if you look at the plug for this one, you'll see it's got a funky shaped plug on it, and one of the prongs is sideways, and that designates that the plug is actually a 20 amp outlet. So the plug must be a 20 amp or it will not work. So when you look at a standard wall outlet, you can tell it will not fit into that because of the plugs being a different size. So I'll show you here. So when you hold this plug up, you can tell it is not going to fit in there. Okay, and they do that so that you cannot plug this super powerful plug into a normal outlet. So the task for today is going to be putting this 20 amp outlet in. Now, since I did the wiring in here myself, I know that all the circuits are wired for 20 amps. So it's not a problem putting this in because of the wire size and the circuit size and all that. I'll show you in a second. So this one's fine, it's going to go in. Here's the tools that we're going to need for today. We got a circuit tester, a live wire tester, we got our wire strippers and cutters, and then we got some screwdrivers, both a Phillips and a flathead, and that hopefully should be all that we need for this project. So one of the first things that we're going to need to do to start this off is kill that circuit. So I'm going to open up my circuit breaker panel here, and we're going to look at all the circuit breakers. Now they should be labeled and nice and neat, but they aren't always that way. Since I did this one myself, everything's labeled and easy to find. So I know that's the far side circuit, and it's the lower side, and it's the lower one. So I'm just going to look for that over here, far side low plugs. So that's going to be the second tier of this first branch here. So area number 2, and it's going to be this lower circuit breaker right here. These are double or tandem circuit breakers, so there's 2 per slot. So I'm just going to throw that bottom one, and that should kill the power for me. Okay, so I'm back over at the plug right now, and I'm going to check it to make sure that the circuit is indeed dead. So I've got my outlet checker, and then I've got my live wire tester. So let's just go make sure that this thing's actually working, and I'll try it on what should be a live plug. And since it turned red, shows you that there is live electricity in there, and I would not want to probe around in there. So let's go down to this plug here, which is the one I'll be working on, and we're going to push it into the hot outlet hole and see if we get anything. And then you never know, somebody could have wired it wrong, so I just check both just to make sure. But you can see it stays green the whole time, so that should be safe to work on. Just to double check, I'm going to throw my plug checker in there, and no lights come on, so it tells me it's dead. Okay, and just to verify, which is always a good idea when you're dealing with safety, to double check things and make sure that my outlet checker is working, because you never know, maybe the batteries are out or the lights are burned out or anything like that. So in this case, everything looks good. All right, the first step that we're going to do is take this duplex cover off, and it simply comes off with one little tiny flathead screw, and we'll pull that thing off. Sometimes it gets stuck to the wall, and then we can start pulling out our duplex. And these will pop right out. And always a good idea to just double check that there's no live wire. Again, I'm checking the black just to make sure. If you shake this thing too hard, sometimes it goes red, but you want to just check, make sure there's no red, especially by the hot wire, which is the black one. And there is no electricity, so I feel safe to put my fingers in there and pull this thing out. So I'll back this off just a little. So when we pull this thing out, you're going to expose some wires, and as you can see, this one is pretty neat and clean. But again, that's because I did this one, and not all of them will be that nice and neat. Hopefully they will be. It's always a lot easier to work when somebody does a professional job. So these wires are easy to see. I fold them so it's super easy to do replacement work on stuff, because it's very likely that you will at some point in your life have to change outlets for whatever reason. In this case, it's to put in a more powerful one. So I'm just going to pop off all of these little wires here. If you don't know where they go, make sure that you take note of where they go, and you want to try to get a lot of forward pressure to not strip out those screws. If you didn't know, black's going to go to the brass side here, white's going to go to the silver, and the bare copper wire is going to go to the green ground. So I'm going to pull all these things off here, get all my screws nice and loose. And now I should be able to. So I've popped those off, and you can see I still have the hooks on them, so I'm going to keep those intact. I'm going to just reuse those. I usually put them onto the top prong. There's no real magic to that, no reason for it other than just consistency. So I try to do it with all of my plugs that way. That way I just kind of remember where everything is. So I've locked down the two that I'm not going to use just to keep them up and out of my way, and that way they're not rattling around. The less chance of them hitting on anything in there, the better. So that's why I do that. So we'll go ahead and start putting these on right now. And these are an interesting setup because they will allow you to push the wire in through the back or wrap it around this little screw thread here. I like to actually put them on the screw thread themselves and not use the little push-in bracket. So these are a little more fidgety because they're not designed for only this one. They can do both. So let me get that. As you can see, I've got the black crook all the way around the lug right now. I've also got it wrapped the correct way so that as I tighten the screw, that the hook will close on itself and that it won't become loose. So now that I've got it tight, I'm going to pull the wire towards the wall away so that it pulls that crook tight on the screw, and then I'm going to tighten the screw down. And I want to put a good amount of force on this thing because I do not want it to come loose. As this heats up and cools down over the different seasons, we don't want it to come loose. Also, if there was some type of weird electrical load where it put heat into here, if it added a lot of heat, I wouldn't want it to tighten up and loosen based on different temperatures. So I tighten it up really well. I've moved the camera over to the other side of the duplex now so that we can see what's going on the other side. This side you can see there's a lot more going on. We've got the white wire connected to the silver, and we've got the bare copper ground wire going to the green ground lug. So I've got the crook going so that as I circle this thing clockwise to close the screw, that the shepherd's crook will tighten up on itself. And same thing on the ground lug. I did the same thing. So now again, I'm going to pull the wire tight and then tighten this thing up. That way it'll just keep everything nice and snug. And again, tighten this thing up pretty much as tight as you can get it. Okay, so now that we've got all of the lugs tightened down, we can go ahead and put the duplex receptacle back into the box. So I'll go ahead, and again, I keep the wires neatly folded, and I want to keep that ground wire away from touching any of the current carrying wires, which would be the white and the black. Get this thing centered up, and then get the screws all started. And then these have a little bit of wiggle room so that you can make sure that the plug is straight up and down. So that's what I'm doing now, just making sure that it's nice and vertical. And then I'll do my final tighten, and we're just about done with this project. Yeah. All tightened up. And then we'll put the duplex cover back on. And say congratulations, another job well done. We'll just do our testing and we're pretty much out of here. Duplex cover back on. Breaker getting flipped back on. And it's a good sign that it didn't instantly blow again. If it does instantly blow again, you'll need to turn it off and then go check and see what you did wrong. Once you've got everything wired back in and everything should be in its right spot, it's always a good idea to go back and just double check and make sure that your checker comes out correct. Since it's got the two lights on, we can tell that it's got the correct wiring. Okay, we're now back at the tool. I've got it plugged in, and let's go ahead and turn this thing on and see what happens. And we have action. We've successfully accomplished our job. The inspector's coming over to make sure all of our work is okay, and as soon as they check us off, we will be good to go. Oh, didn't appropriately clean up, I suppose. All right, well, signing off. Until next time.